As we all know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, everything has slowed down. For a year and some change, we were all stuck cooped in our houses, forced to watch the paint dry as the world changed around us. Some of our favorite local spots went out of business, some of our favorite stores, some of our favorite pastimes. As a comic book fan, I loved going to the movies. Seeing some of my favorite superheroes on screen was a cathartic experience. The last movie I've watched in theaters was Spider-Man No Way Home. These days, I've been reluctant to attend theaters. Something feels off about the experience. Between the empty seats and sticky floors, it's not the same watching Spider-Man swing across the screen. During the advanced writing and research class at FIU, I set out to solve the movie theater problem, and I came away with a truth that I and every other theater enthusiast must face. Theaters aren't selling tickets. Brooke Barnes, a journalist, in a 2021 article for the Philadelphia Tribune, wrote that about 49% of pre-pandemic moviegoers are no longer buying tickets. Some of them, roughly 8%, have likely been lost forever. Movie theaters aren't filling seats, and they haven't for a while now, relatively speaking. Anusha Saku, writer for Bloomberg, wrote that admissions to theaters in the US and Canada slumped 5.8% to 1.24 billion in 2017, the lowest percentage since 1992. With the recent struggles in admissions for movie theaters, nothing could be worse than a pandemic shutdown, unless you add the myriad of streaming services that have entered the mix. Fit for the moment, streaming services rose in popularity during the pandemic, providing the ultimate source of entertainment for homebound consumers. Gary Crowdis, founder and editor-in-chief for the Cineast Film Editorial, wrote, in 2020 alone, Netflix, a major streaming service, added nearly 37 million subscribers. The following year, this number ballooned to nearly 204 million worldwide. Despite the success of streaming, the general thought is still that movie theaters will bounce back, provided the necessary time. However, for theaters, the issue is deeper than the pandemic or the success. Movie theaters can't provide that same draw for post-pandemic consumers that have changed since the year and some change spent cooped in their houses. There are three possible ways movie theaters can change to attract consumers. 1. Fully embrace streaming. 2. Carve out a niche. And 3. Widen the scope of their platform. I'll go into each way in detail. Let's face the facts. Streaming isn't going anywhere. After its meteoric rise during the pandemic, the streaming industry has cemented itself as a pillar of entertainment. Most people have already traded out their television channels for the Netflix or Hulu experience. In a 2020 article for the New York Times, Brooks Barnes and Nicole Sperling noted that many theaters believe streaming services are not a threat to the industry, citing the countless instances that theaters have overcome the technological innovations in the industry. What was omitted from this assertion was that theaters needed to raise prices to maintain revenue during the emergence of technology. Back then, streaming posed a bigger threat than any numbers could tell. Today, it's extremely evident across the board. John Stoll, a journalist for the Wall Street Journal, noted that streaming memberships from Netflix alone had ballooned to 168 million, while ticket sales at the US box office have stagnated around 1.3 billion annually. Movie theater owners must learn to swallow their pride and get with the trends. A part of this is embracing streaming services. So how do movie theaters embrace streaming? They don't have arms after all. Terry Teachout, columnist, wrote that after the pandemic, streaming videos will remain central to, perhaps even dominant in the US film industry, and that it will soon evolve into the principal way in which American moviegoers discover and experience older films of all kinds. Teachout makes a good point here. Streaming services monopolize older IPs or shows/movies and throws them on their platform. The nostalgia that these popular films provide attract consumers. Movie theaters operate differently. They showcase the new films. In recent years, the theatrical window has tightened, and during the pandemic, some films have simultaneously released in streaming, but movie theaters are still leading the race for the film industry. Movie theaters must recognize this and embrace this reality, separating themselves as a niche. Now, what does it mean for movies to separate themselves as a niche? Successful movies are marketed to popular fandoms. Emily Flynn, a researcher, explores this idea in her study on movie theater attendance. Flynn conducted a study that gathered the top box office films of all times and the top box office films within the last 6 years. From this list of films, she decided to categorize the films based on their relation to the following categories: pre-existing fandoms, remake sequels, superhero movies, and cinematic firsts. If the film fit into multiple categories, it was placed in both. The results of her research found that films with pre-existing fandoms or remake sequels fit the qualities of most films on her list. Flynn's research showed that movies find success with strong fandoms that allow for increased engagement. Movie theaters that showcase films with strong ties to specific niches can grow an audience. Movie theaters should turn to this to increase attendance. The last movie that got people out of their houses was most likely a superhero movie like Batman. When theaters cater to strong niches and limit the number of movies that aren't commercially successful, they can increase their attendance. Lastly, movie theaters can broaden the scope of their platform to increase attendance. For this point, I turn to an analysis of CMX Cinemas, a theater chain that has a location in Florida. If you were to go over CMX Cinema's website, you'd find that they're not just a theater. CMX Cinema is a high-end luxury theater that offers dining 30 minutes before the movies and an integrated sports bar. For so long, theaters have constricted themselves, building venues for one function, watching movies. CMX Cinemas have broken from tradition with their Stone Bar, attracting consumers who may want to spend a night out with friends watching a sports event. By widening their platform, CMX has opportunities to attain revenue from many places and attract consumers from several established markets. Movie theaters can and must do the same to attract the post-pandemic consumer. To end, I return to this, an image of a theater struggling with attendance, to say that movie theaters, a beloved haven for many, may not be like this for long. Tomorrow the ship may right itself. But one thing is for sure, movie theaters must change to attract the post-pandemic consumer and achieve steady growth for years to come. Thank you.